How have you traumatized your parents? When I was in high school I was very bulimic. If someone was downstairs after I ate dinner I wouldn't be able to go into the bathroom. So my brilliant plan was to go upstairs and puke into grocery bags. I found this to be way easier than using the bathroom. In the comfort of my room I could throw up in peace and not be worried of getting caught. Of course I couldn't throw them away when they were home, so I kept them around my room. I had vomit bags everywhere. Under the bed. In my desk drawers. In my closet. It wasn't pretty. One day I went out with a friend and came back at around 3 to get my clothes for work. My stepdad was in his living room and I could hear the wet dry vacuum. I asked why he was cleaning in a joking way and my mum turned around and said, "Cleo, our dog, got into your room today." I instantly was mortified. I went into the living room and my stepdad refused to acknowledge me. There was old puke everywhere. On the stairs. On the floor. In my room. On the couch. Oh god, it was horrible. One of the worst experiences with bulimia I've ever had. My dad always wanted me to court to not even hold hands with a girl until we were married. That wasn't my plan. Though. And after a very awkward date with my first real girlfriend, now my wife, at the ripe old age of 16. My dad asked me who this girl I was talking about as he drove me to my mom's house. I told him it was my girlfriend. He asked me what that meant and I told him basically. It means that we had sex. He nearly drove off the road before I could explain that I was joking. I waited 6 months to hold her hand. 9 months to kiss her. It was the best that I could do. I did wait until we were married. 7 years later. To actually have sex. When I was 17 I came home to my parents' house from a party pretty late one weekend. In my drunken state I decided it would be a good idea to make some hot dogs. So naturally I drenched them in ketchup and mustard. But at the same time I was feeling the urge to punch one out. Now this is before I had my own laptop, so I had to use the family desktop for porn. That is the last thing I remembered until I woke up in the morning to my dad screaming at me. I fell asleep mid-jerk off. Covered in ketchup mustard. Completely naked sitting at the desktop with porn up. I had finished all of the hot dogs so it looked like I had been using condiments as lube or something. My dad never told my mom. Or that's what he told me. He still gives me a hard time about it. I've got a good one that I've told here before, but it's so goddamn stupid it deserves a retelling. When I was 8 years old, way back in 1977, I was flying home solo to Pennsylvania, and back then it was okay for your parents to walk you to the gate, without a boarding ticket pre-tsar. So as my entire family is going through security I slyly, but not quietly, ask my mom, "Hey mom, did you remember to pack the gun?" I swear. I do not know what possessed me to say that, but said it I did. And of course. Security did not take it lightly. They took us out of line. Went through all our shit, twice, and warned me about not saying stupid shit like that ever. My mom said she was so fucking mad at me she could have kicked me to Pennsylvania. I'm a 44-year-old grandma now and I still haven't lived it down. Not me. My husband. His mom has told me of my husband's terror from when he was young. He was an OO and his only brother is about 17 years older than him, so he got away with a lot. He would put mousetraps in the mailbox. Lock people out. Traumatized the neighbor's dogs and even made a homemade bomb which he set off right outside their back door. I think she said the worst part was with him in the bathroom. I always wondered why there were hook and latch locks at the tops of all the doors on both sides. Apparently they had tried it to keep him from hiding in the rooms. His mom said she would often go to use the bathroom and he would fling the shower curtain open and scare the bejesus out of her while she was sitting on the toilet. That's right. He didn't get them when they came in the door. He waited until they were comfortably seated doing their business and then ruin it. The locks didn't do any good. They just never bothered with taking them down. I suffer from pretty bad insomnia. And nothing seems to help. One night, after not having slept for more than 2 hours in the past week, I took 4 milligrams of Xanax, quite a lot for me as a 110-pound female. I still couldn't fall asleep. So becoming desperate, I decided to have a cocktail in addition to the Xanax. I have no memory of anything after that. But apparently my mother heard a loud crash and got up to investigate. She found me lying on the bathroom floor. Unresponsive, but breathing. She and my dad drove me to the ER and I was fine the next day. She says it was the most terrifying moment of her life and she will never be rid of the image of me lying on that floor. TL. DR insomnia leads to bad decisions of mixing Xanax and booze. Mother finds me passed out and near odd. Really late and most people won't read this, but I once had sex with a girl on my parents' bed back in high school. I was 15. And it was like the third time I had done it. So I leave the condom wrapper on the bed. And my dad comes home and finds it. Needless to say, he calls my mom going all crazy. I come home to them arguing like crazy about a wrapper and I had to confess it was mine. My father hit me so hard with a belt. I still have flashbacks. After he calmed down, he congratulated me. TLDR left condom wrapper on parents' bed. Dad finds it. Almost causes divorce. Happening right now. It's my brother, not me. I'm 20 and was recently discharged from the Air Force. Story for another time. My brother is 17 and working at Taco Bell on the weekends while he attends high school during the weekdays. He just messaged my mother that he'd like to hang out with Brian from Taco. Forgot to type Bell, I guess. My mother responded asking who Brian is and where they'd hang out. My brother just responded, please let me hang out with him. I only get to see him once a week. So now my parents are sobbing downstairs believing that my brother is gay and seeking sex with Brian. My father is going all detective and putting together his own facts like this just now, pacing back and forth in front of my sobbing mother while screaming, I knew it, I knew it, he's been watching a lot of men's volleyball lately and what was that UFC obsession all about? He's fucking other men. Sigh, my brother has told me about Brian before and I actually know the guy. My brother doesn't have many games for his Xbox 360. And Brian has Borderlands 2. My brother simply wants to play Borderlands 2 with a friend from work. Although my brother is completely oblivious that it's 11:00 PM on a Saturday night. And my parents are already paranoid people on a regular basis. All in all, I believe my brother has traumatized our parents tonight. So I guess this post works. TLDR. My brother wants to play Borderlands with a friend at the friend's house. But conveyed it poorly to my parents, leading them to believe he's having sex with another man. My brother is 17. This is gonna get buried, but here's mine. I went on a trip to Jamaica when I was about 19 years old with some friends. I got back to my parents' house after a late flight and wanted to show my mom pictures from the trip. I had them on my computer and had put the parent-friendly ones in a separate iPhoto folder. My mom was on the couch, close to falling asleep, so she put her head on my lap to see the pictures. I went to click on the family-friendly folder and instead clicked on my trash icon in iPhoto. Months earlier I had taken a few risque topless pictures for my then boyfriend's birthday and had them moved them to the trash. So instead of showing my mom the beautiful beaches of Negril, she was laying on my lap staring at 20-30 pictures of her daughter's boobs and come hither stare. I have never clicked around so furiously in my life. Trying to close that window. All she said was oh. And then the next day said, I hope you're not posting those on the MySpace, and luckily never mentioned it again. But I'm pretty sure she was absolutely traumatized. Edit. TL. DR wanted to show my mom pics from a vacation. Ended up showing her my boobies. Not my story, but a buddy of mine who tells it this way. I was in 2nd grade or so, and I was just becoming curious about how stuff works down there. I also had a teddy bear that was as big as me too. Anyway, so I was watching TV one day when Starship Troopers came on, and it was a sex scene. I had never seen sex before, so I started becoming aroused. I took my teddy bear, and I got on top of it. I started doing what they were doing, and it felt funny at the time. I then look back, and my mom saw me. She never talks about it. Double quote. Not just my parents. But when I first started dating my boyfriend, we were sort of long distance. We went to different schools and only saw each other on the weekend. I took some naked pictures and sent them to him. And I thought I deleted them off of my SD card. A few months later, I went to California with my mom over the summer to visit my aunt and uncle. They wanted all the pictures from the trip on my camera. So I gave it to my uncle to take my photos off of it. I completely forgot that a month before that, my friends got our beach pictures off my camera and all ended up with the naked pictures. A long time later, my aunt texted me out of nowhere and said that I should make sure to delete my photos before giving my camera to my uncle. Apparently he had seen the naked pictures and freaked out. My aunt is pretty cool, so I thought she wouldn't tell my parents. But she did. I'm assuming she thought it was funny. It was really awkward coming into my parents' room with my dad telling me that I was smarter than that. Blah blah blah. This was after a picture of a girl with cum on her face circulated my high school and my parents talked about how stupid she was. Ugh. My uncle was already an awkward guy. So seeing him after that was awful. When I was about 12, my parents attempted to ground me for, well, I don't remember exactly what. Probably some stupid shit that I did. It was the first time I had ever been grounded before. Because I was generally a pretty good kid, but knew too much for my own good. I was so infuriated at the idea of having my, up until now, inalienable rights to freedom taken away, that I stormed off into the garage, popped the hood of the family car, and removed the terminals leading to the car's battery. Knowing that there was no way in hell that they'd be savvy enough to even begin to figure out what was wrong, let alone fix it. I marched back inside and screamed, "If I'm grounded, so are you," at the top of my lungs and ran up to my room to pout. From my room, I could hear them shouting at each other in the garage. Eventually, they came up and ordered me to fix the car, which I refused to do. Everyone went to bed angry that night. But the next morning when my dad had to go to work, he frustratingly gave in so I would re-enable the car. I could tell he wasn't happy about it though. Come to think of it, none of us have ever talked about it since. And that was decades ago. This happened when I was 10. I was in the bathroom preparing to take a bath. For some reason our cat was in there with me. She was sitting on the side of the tub while I was brushing my teeth. When I finished brushing and flossing, the cat hadn't moved. When I turned on the faucets to draw the bath, the water really freaked her out. She was pretty young and sprightly. Basically full grown but still a kitten. The sudden burst of water from the faucet caused her to leap straight into the air, kicking and clawing, and somehow her back paw clawed into my lower lip while she was doing this weird kitty acrobatics. I don't remember feeling any pain, but I looked into the mirror and discovered a profuse bleeding. If you've ever cut your lip, you know how it bleeds. Dark, thick blood, seemingly unending. At that moment I knew what I would do. With blood pouring out of my mouth, down my chin and onto my chest, I ran out of the bathroom and into the living room where my parents were watching the evening news. Clutching my abdomen and falling to my knees, I screamed, "My stomach! My stomach! I don't know why this is happening." Double quote. Oh, the horror. I still remember their faces. And when I told them, after maybe 20 seconds of this charade, that it was just a cat scratch to the lip, they were so angry. This happened literally just a week ago. I'm 25. I spend a lot of time at my BF's house. But when I'm not with him, I'm at my parents' house, saving up to get an apartment. I have my vibrator with me for those lonely nights. I was at my BF's house and my mom decided to go on one of her famous cleaning frenzies. She went through my sock drawer, where I keep my vibrator. It's hidden in 2 socks though. While she was moving shit around, she must have activated the vibrator because she heard the buzzing. My sister sent me a text message and told me my mom was pissed I had a vibrator and she threw it away. Catholics. Next time I came home, she could barely look me in the eye. When I was about 5, we had a babysitter while my parents went out with some friends. While they were out, I cut myself. and the babysitter and I went to get a bandage from the master bathroom. I found some interesting things and the babysitter told me to ask my mom what they were as she didn't know. Babysitter put me to bed. Parents came home with lots of friends for a few more drinks. And I strolled into the living room. Fists full of tampons. Saying, "Mommy, what are these?" Edit. Moved for clarity. Okay. Should probably do a throwaway for this. But it's really not that bad. My girlfriend and I were in my room having the sexy times. We had pretty much finished and were just talking and cuddling on the floor. We hear my dad coming upstairs but think nothing of it. As the door is shut and he typically knocks. He does knock. But he has a question for me. So he starts talking and pushes the door open. Shit. I'm facing away from the door. But my girlfriend is facing me. Everything's too quick. We don't have any time to cover or shove crumpled clothes in front of our bodies. My dad opens the door and is assaulted with full frontal nudity. He is stunned for a moment. Then turns quickly and says simply, "Get her." Double quote. A piquant line. But unfortunately our dog had followed dad upstairs and wanted to check in with my girlfriend and I. Dad came back 5 seconds later. Cracked the door just wide enough for the dog to escape and told him to get out. It was an awkward dinner. Not me, but my little sister. When I was in 4th and 5th grade my dad was in the Air Force and we were stationed at the NATO base in Iceland. My parents were out at some party at the officers club and there was the girl babysitting my siblings while I stayed at a friend's house. My sister decided to play hide and seek with the sitter. Well, the sitter looked for her for over an hour and got scared that she had left the house. She called the O Club and had my parents paged. They left the general's table in a hurry and turned the house upside down. Couldn't find her anywhere. The MPs were called and hours went by. They literally sealed off the entire base. No one in or out of any gate and all planes were grounded. And put the whole police force and the entire group of KC-135 crew members there on TDY out looking for her everywhere. Around 1 am she finally came out of the coat closet she had hidden in after she was awoken by all the commotion of the cops' radios going off. Apparently she had fallen asleep on the floor in there under some coats. My mom had looked in that closet numerous times. But didn't pull everything out of it. TLDR. My sister almost caused an international incident. For the first time in my life I have a perfect story for AskReddit and I'm 4,000 comments late. Oh. I was about 2-3 years old at the time and living at my grandmother's house with my aunt. Parents were away on business in Poland. Oh. This was while I still lived in Russia. One day after we hosted a family gathering my aunt decided to take a nap on the couch. And I do not remember this at all but apparently I decided to pick up an empty champagne bottle from the previous night and smack her in the face with it. Yeah. The way my grandmother tells it is that she was in the kitchen making dinner when she heard my aunt start wailing and crying. So she goes outside. Our kitchen was in the other building. Just the other side of the yard from the main building with the rooms and whatnot, to see my aunt going down the stairs into the yard with blood all over her face and clothing. Crying and carrying a blood-covered me in her arms. Also crying. Her eyebrow to this day is split and hair will not grow where she had to get stitches. No recollection of this even a little bit from me. None. Let's see. At age 6 I got attacked by a German Shepherd belonging to a neighbor because I pulled its tail. Mangled my left bicep and required 36 stitches to fix up. At 13 I fell through a bathroom window. Sliced open my elbow. In the process half severing an artery and tendon and cutting my left calf open down to the bone. 53 stitches for that episode. At 17 I crashed my car into a tree on a gravel back road. Walked out of that with only a broken thumb. At 20 I took a job as a bouncer and after half a year was stabbed in the right forearm by a chick with a broken champagne flute because I threw her boyfriend out for punching her. Only 4 stitches this time. At 24, Christmas just gone, my appendix burst. I died on the operating table. Was brought back and thankfully fought through it. Only to almost die again a week later when my heart rate hit 198 and temp went up to 40. 6 due to septicemia. I had 82 staples for that one, and it's lead to my favorite scar ever that runs the length on my abdomen. You could say I've made an art of terrorizing my poor mother, haha. I'm probably late to the party, but when I was 4, my family lived on the beach. I liked to go out on the shore and explore, throw rocks, and whatnot. We had some neighbors I was always interested in because they always had big parties. One day, I decided I wanted to go. I walked over and joined the party, playing with kids and eating hot dogs. Nobody thought otherwise, because they assumed I was somebody's son. I come back a few hours later, last hot dog in tow, to find my parents had called the police trying to find me. They asked where I was and I just told them I was at the neighbors and they gave me hot dogs. Didn't get in trouble, but I didn't get to visit the neighbors much after that. My dad was fixing this big ass closet one day. The closet was very old and had an extremely heavy door. The problem with that closet was that the door hinges was loose. At that time I was about 8-9 years old, and my little sister was fooling around inside the closet while my dad was trying to tighten the hinges. He told me to get her out of there, since she was just bothering him. And as I lifted her up, the goddamn closet door fell down on my pinky toe. It's all a blur, but I clearly remember me running down the hallway screaming my heart out while my sock got pumped with blood. After that I passed out, waking up a while later in the backseat of my father's car, with a shitload of toilet paper around my foot. My dad didn't say a word. When I arrived at the hospital I got drugged down and operated. Fortunately, they managed to put my pinky toe back where it belonged. I'm guessing my dad felt very shameful after the incident. However, my mom told me a couple of years ago that after I lost my toe, he immediately put it inside his mouth, because he had read that was the only way to save the toe from dying or something like that, and drove to the hospital with the toe in his mouth. I don't think he'll forget that. I hated school in 4th grade. Terrible teacher. A few bratty other students. Made going to school miserable. So I loved any excuse to get out of school for all or part of the day, even if it was a doctor's appointment. One day, for some reason, my doctor's appointment was cancelled. I was having none of this. I barricaded myself in my bedroom, no lock on the door, just my desk chair and some stuffed animals as a blockade, and screamed that I would rather die than go to school. My mom was freaked out, crying hysterically and everything. My poor dad, having to deal with 2 hysterical women girls at once. The next day I had an emergency session with mom's therapist. From another post. When I was 7 or 8 I did a science project on the antibacterial efficacy of various soaps. Basically involved keeping hands dirty for a day, pressing grubby thumbs into petri dishes full of agar, then washing and doing the same again. I'd take tracings of the cultures. Bigger colonies were bad, smaller ones good. This ended up winning the county science fair for my grade in a large metropolitan area. So that was nice. But before that, after I'd finished the experiments but before I discarded the dishes, I got into a dispute with my parents, don't remember what about. I thought, I'll show them. So I took the nastiest culture and swabbed it onto their bedroom doorknob. They both got sick as dogs and I had to take care of them for a couple of days. Served me right. TLDR. I waged bacteriological warfare against my parents using my science project. But I told them long ago and we laugh about it now. I traumatized my mother twice. Both times when I was about 3 years old. The first time we were walking through the botanic gardens and there was a wedding taking place. Apparently the bride was a larger lady. And I piped up in my piercing little voice, "Mummy, look at that fat bride." My mother grabbed me under one arm and ran away. She thinks the bride didn't hear, but she's certain some of the guests did. The second time I traumatized her. She took me to her work one day and I met one of her colleagues. He was from Ghana and had very dark skin. Apparently I said, "Mummy, look at that dirty man." Mum said she just wanted the floor to swallow her up. But the guy handled it with exceptional grace and just laughed and said, "Don't worry. At least I can't blush." Double quote. Yeah. I'm surprised I wasn't left at an orphanage after those 2 episodes. I now have kids of my own who are determined to give me my comeuppance. When I was young, maybe around 5 or 6, I was trying to find Christmas presents in closets or under beds. But instead I found a shitload of condoms and sex toys. At the time I didn't know what they were, so I opened up the box of condoms, thinking it was a balloon. I started to run downstairs with what I thought was a sword, vibrator, and trying to blow up the condoms. I then ran into the room where my parents were and started telling them how I finally found my Christmas presents. My parents still talk about that today. When I was about 8 years old, I was going through our medicine cabinet, like the little rascal I was, and found one of my brother's old EpiPens, the epinephrine injector fused during a severe allergic reaction. I was curious about how it worked, and figured it was like any other pen in that you clicked the top with your thumb and the needle came out the other end. Turns out the needle comes out of the end that you click. And it ended up going right into my thumb. When my parents came upon me screaming my lungs out in the bathroom, the walls were painted with blood that I'd sprayed around getting the pen out of my thumb. Apparently it was pretty grisly. When I was 15 I was super fucking horny all the time. I also had never seen a penis other than my own or in a porno. These 2 things are important. So I have my group of friends and one of my friends who we will call the had older, cooler brothers. So they would get us pornos and we would trade with each other every so often. After a while have a collection of about 8 or 9 pornos. All VHS. Hidden in a garment bag which contained a suit I never wore. In my closet. I also had acquired a penis pump. I know. Laugh it up. Honestly I thought it was small by comparison. But it was the kind that has the long cylinder and squeeze pump. This was also hidden in the garment bag. Along with condoms and cigars. I just knew it was a genius hiding spot. Incorrecto. Come home from school one day. With everything that was in the garment bag on the kitchen counter. Super busted. And my mom is freaking the fuck out over the penis pump. It was like she found a severed head or some shit. She was mortified. So she yells at me and says, "Wait till I tell your dad," and sends me up to my room. My dad comes home. I hear them talking. Then I hear him ascending the stairs. I'm terrified. He opens the door with the biggest grin on his face. Tells me not to worry about it. Gives me my condoms back but says we have to throw the tapes and pump away. But he put them in a bag and put them on top of the garbage so I could retrieve them. And told me it was nothing. I was a teenage boy and that my mom would never understand. My mom thought I was the devil though. One time during my sophomore year in college, I had been feeling guilty for not seeing my family very often. Even though they lived 20 minutes away. So I decided to take them out to dinner. Since I had some extra cash, I thought I would take them out somewhere nice. So we all went to Black Angus. I thought it would be cooler to bring my boyfriend that I had been dating seriously for 6 months. No one in my family normally does this. I find out later that my dad was scared shitless that I was either going to tell the family I was either pregnant or getting married at that dinner. When I was in 8th grade I was staying the night at my friend's house. And it so happened that one of my favorite movies, A Christmas Story, was going to be playing on TBS. My family didn't have cable and I knew everyone would enjoy watching it on Christmas at my house, so I asked my buddy if we could record it onto VHS so I could take it home. He grabbed a blank tape from his dad's office, popped it in the VCR, and we recorded Ralphie and his Christmas shenanigans. The following day I went home and told my parents and siblings that I had a copy of the movie. They were ecstatic and we all agreed to watch it the following week on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve rolls around. And my parents, brothers, about 5 and 8 years old, sister, 7 years old, and myself gather around the TV to watch the movie. I rewind the tape to beginning and press play. For the next 3 seconds, although it felt like an hour, My entire family and I watched a woman sucking a large dick before it quickly cut to a Christmas story. We had obviously taped over one of my friend's dad's porno tapes. Nobody flinched. I looked at my parents, who had these bizarre frozen smiles as if nothing had happened and everything was right with the world. My brothers and sister continued watching the TV but had looks of bewilderment on their faces as they tried to process what they had just seen while simultaneously trying to enjoy the beginning of a Christmas story. Nobody in my family has ever mentioned this event since. I'm 30 years old now, and a Christmas story is no longer a part of our family Christmas tradition. For some context, when I was about 7, I lost my cat. He just disappeared one day. Probably coyotes. But his favorite thing to do was to sleep in my mom's bathroom sink. Also, my neighborhood is infested with cats because someone down the street never got hers fixed. So, now for the real story. I was swinging on my porch swing, looked over into the bushes, and saw a cat. It was laying down, eyes closed, mouth open, no wounds as far as I could see. It looked asleep, but it looked sick too. So to make it feel better, I picked the dead cat up, took it inside, and placed it in the bathroom sink. Plus, I was feeling really lonely after my first cat disappeared. I thought my mom would let me keep this one. TLDR. My mom walked in on me petting a dead cat I had placed in the bathroom sink. This happened the summer after my senior year of high school. After a long night of drinking I came home and apparently felt the desire to puke. My parents live on the 3rd floor. I live on the 2nd. And have a bathroom on my floor. For some reason I turned the fan on when I went into the bathroom, which is kinda loud and my parents' room is pretty much right above the bathroom. So I puked hard. Mostly in the toilet at first. I get hot and really sweaty when I'm puking. So naturally I stripped down to my boxers. I then somehow managed to puke all over myself. Well, that's unacceptable to drunk me, so I guess I decided to take a shower to clean up. Never managed to turn the water on. Next thing I know I'm getting woken up by my mother screaming bloody murder, crying profusely. Apparently I passed out in the tub. The fan woke my mom up in the middle of the night, so she came to investigate. And found me nearly naked, covered in my own puke, passed out in the bathtub with, she says, my eyes rolling into the back of my head. She thought I was dead. I would say that was a bit traumatizing for her. TLDR. My mom found me passed out covered in puke in the bathtub and thought I was dead. When I was in kindergarten, I made a friend while at school. We really hit it off. And she said she had a big bag of Halloween candy at home and offered to share it with me. It was a fairly short walk to her place from school. And from her place a short little walk home. So I head over to her place. And completely forget to tell my parents where I went after school. I completely lose track of time. We ate candy and played video games. Her family must have thought my parents knew where I was. We played board games and ate dinner. And I didn't go home until after 9. I remember getting home, walking through the front door and being greeted by the sight of my parents, both completely in tears, on the phone with the police. I immediately realized what I did wrong. And I thought for sure I was going to be grounded forever. They weren't mad, though. They were just overjoyed that I was okay. A bunch of bear hugs and tear-filled expressions of parental affection later. I felt terrible. They must have thought I was dead. I was missing for over 6 hours. Every single one of their friends was out looking for me. I am such an asshole. TLDR. When I was in kindergarten, I disappeared for over 6 hours on my way home from school and didn't tell anyone where I was, so I could play video games and eat candy. When we were about 5 or 7 years old, me and my brother discovered the similarities between ketchup and blood. Mom wasn't home yet, so we got some knives from the kitchen. All the ketchup we could find. Cut some holes in our shirts for the knives and staged a huge crime scene in the living room. We loved secretly watching the thrillers our parents used to see in the evenings from the living room door when we were believed to be in our beds. So we had some experience with a plausible scenario and put a lot of thought into it, creating a huge battle scene with blood on the walls, the couches, and of course lots of ketchup on our motionless bodies in the center of the room. Mom had kind of a breakdown. When I was about 9 years old, we lived in a crappy high-rise apartment building. I opened the window of my bedroom, removed the screen, stuck my head out the window and screamed as loud as I could like I was falling. I then quickly proceeded to hide under my bed as my parents frantically came running into my room with me nowhere to be seen and thought I fell out the window. Eventually I started giggling and was busted. They were not impressed, to say the least. Ugh. This one makes me cringe just thinking about it. Stroke. When I was 13. I was about as horny as you'd expect a 13-year-old to be. The problem was, I was living in a very religious household at the time. My parents go through phases. This was their religious phase. Luckily for me, it was while I was going through puberty. And my parents had an ironclad parental filter on the interwebs. So porn was out of the question. So I decided to draw my own porn. And I'm a pretty damn good artist when it comes to drawing things that are right in front of me to look at. So what I'd do is, I'd take magazine pictures of women who had relatively little clothing on, and just edit out the clothing as I was drawing. Well, of course, my parents found my stack of drawings eventually. Which isn't too bad, I guess. My dad even said uncomfortably that I had some talent at drawing and should pursue it, just with different subject matter. Close bracket. Here's the part that makes me cringe. My mother decided that one of the drawings looked too much like her. It was purely coincidental. It was literally a picture out of an advertisement that I had copied to the best of my ability. And she asked me, very uncomfortably, if I fantasized about her. Ladies and gentlemen, not much in the world makes you want to crawl into a hole and die more than when your own mother thinks you've been fantasizing about her. Edit. Well, this is what I get for telling my most embarrassing story of all time without making a throwaway. My first time hitting the top of a thread. Of course. Edit 2. Based on the comments, I think I'm gonna go ahead and clear up future confusion. Nothing came of this. She asked if it was her. I said no. It was really awkward for a while. And then we moved on. Sorry. But hardly anything that our incest would find exciting. Capital P. Oh, there are far too many ways I have traumatized my parents. I'll just go with the top 3. Number 1 would be getting bone cancer and almost dying. Number 2 would be relapsing and almost dying again. Number 3 would be when I dropped a mirror on myself. At home alone. And cut my artery open. So much blood. Had to find a way to stop the bleeding so I could call 911 for myself. On a comedic note, I nearly gave my dad a heart attack when I took my fake leg, put jeans and a sneaker on it, stuffed the other pant leg and added a sneaker, and tucked it under the couch so it would be the first thing he saw when he came home. He thought I had fallen under the couch. He still talks about it over 10 years later.